And you're live, Andy.
Hi, everybody. I'm sports psychologist Dr. Andrew Jacobs. I'm the host of the Sports Psychology Hour, which airs every Sunday morning here in Kansas City from 7 to 8 a.m. on 810WHB.com radio. Over the past few years, in addition to my show, which has been in 33 years of running, I've
Hmm.
launched the Sports Psychology Hour now as a podcast via live stream. So I'd like you to visit my website, which is winnersunlimited.com, where you click on the podcast tab at the top of the page, and you can listen to the show. That's winnersunlimited.com. And we're doing a whole series of conversations now focusing on coaches and athletes. And today, I'm really fortunate to have joining us Athletic Director John Woods. John, thanks for joining us tonight. You have such an extensive background, like we were talking before. It'd take the whole show to talk about your accomplishments. So thank you so much for being with us. You're an athletic director in Illinois. You've coached, you've played sports, you work with young people. I really want to thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I'm starting my 44th year of work the day after Labor Day, which is hard to believe in some senses for me because 40 years ago yesterday, I left Kansas City to go to Colorado Springs to work with our Olympic cycling team, who I've worked with for 7 years, and got ready. We spent 3 weeks in Colorado Springs. Then we went to LA for the Olympics, where we won a record 9 medals, hadn't won any in 72 years. And I was fortunate enough to work with a lot of those cyclists, specifically our track cyclists, where we won a number of medals there. And hard to believe it's been 40 years ago already. With the Olympics coming on here pretty soon, there's a lot of excitement going on with all the athletes and everything going on. And it's going to be really a lot of fun to watch the Olympics. In fact, I'm going to have Steve Hague, who won a gold medal in the individual pursuit and silver medal as part of our team pursuit squad in 1984, on my radio show in a few weeks, talking about the pressures and demands that go into being an Olympic athlete. Now, you've been around sports your whole life, obviously, too. You've coached, you're an athletic director. So let's start off with this.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask your opinion on youth sports today. It's one of my passions, of course, with my book, Just Let Them Play, Guiding Parents, Coaches, and Athletes Through Youth Sports, that I co-wrote with Jeff Montgomery and Pete Malone. We talk so much about where youth sports is at. And it's a concern for me. The burnout rate with young kids today, when they reach age 12 and 13, is almost 80% with sports.
Mm-hmm.
They're quitting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to be 70 years old this year. And when I played sports, I didn't quit when I was 12 or 13. I'm still playing sports
Mm-hmm.
as long as my body will hold up.
Mm-hmm.
But we're seeing kids quitting today. And I'm thinking in part because they're starting organized sports at 4 and 5.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time they're 7 and 8, if they're good enough, they're on a traveling team or a competitive team. And by the time they're 11 or 12, they've been playing it for 2/3 of their life, and they're tired of it and they want to quit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that's because of overzealous coaches, overzealous parents, and of course the almighty dollar, which is why this is going on.
Mm-hmm.
So let me get your thoughts on that as we get started tonight. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and certainly one that we talk about quite a bit. I was actually just on a 4-day golf trip with 24 buddies and down in Southern Illinois, and that came up quite a bit when we started this 16 years ago. I had kids, and I'm the old guy in the group now, and some of our guys were just starting out in their starting their families, and I was playing golf with one of the guys today, and he was talking about his 10-year-old and his travel team and making sure he's on the right team and making sure that, they go to all the places and play all the games and make sure they have an opportunity to go to the national tournament, which I'm not sure what that means still.
What
And
sport?
What's that?
What sport is he talking about?
Baseball.
Baseball.
Yeah. And so, it was interesting. And again, and I share that. I preface by sharing that story to say this. Everything that you said is accurate. The kids that are quitting sport quit for various reasons. And I gotta believe the number one reason, Andy, is it's not fun.
Yeah.
Anymore. It's not fun. And we ask our kids in our Wildcats Will Peak Performance and Leadership Development Group that very question, like, what are the obstacles that get in the way of you achieving what you set out to achieve? And
that's
they
a high
talk
school
about
program you're talking about. Excuse me.
what's that?
That's a high school program you're in for.
Yeah, and it's open to all of our kids. And every Friday we meet for 45 minutes. We teach them peak performance strategies and leadership development skills and strategies. And so when I think about youth sports, I think about, and I'm looking at the list that our kids shared here: pressure, selfishness, drama, looking too far into the future, blaming others, the pressure of needing to get a scholarship, feeling like an investment instead of a child. Like, did you like when I read that, Andy, it broke my heart. Like when a kid says, I feel more like an investment instead of a child, it was sad. And I was talking to another buddy, and we were saying, like, if the reason we do these sports at such an early age is to focus on the individual development of their child, right? To give them a chance to fill in the blank, whatever the blank is. How much development is truly happening? How much time is truly spent practicing the skills, the drills, the fundamentals? And what's interesting is that if you ask most people, and you say, in fact, I'll ask you, what percentage of the game is mental? I mean, you probably know the cheat code, but most people would say, what, 90%, 80%, 75%, right? Somewhere in that area.
Yes.
Let me see your practice plan.
There isn't one.
Exactly. So if we say that 75% of the game is mental, and whatever the skills and strategies are, the motivation, the commitment, the discipline, the awareness, the self-talk, the focus, the body language, in fact, all the things that I read that you focus on, if we're not teaching them those skills, then we can't say it's 75, 80% mental. We either need to change what we say or change what we do. And the reality is, I believe, based on observation, and I've got two kids. One was a Division I college athlete, went to the Olympic trials, but he was a three-sport guy. He played them all growing up. In high school, he did three sports. Our daughter, she did them all growing up, chose not to compete at the collegiate level. But the focus and the emphasis was on their individual development and growth, and not
And I'm
on
sure your kids
playing.
are pretty happy adults now.
My son that competed in college, he still swims, and he's one of wait, let me rephrase that. He's the only one of his friend group, his brotherhood, the sisterhood where he competed, that still swims today. The rest of them don't because they hate it. And so
Well,
when I
yeah,
think
go
about
ahead.
that, and then you throw in the importance of rest, recovery, sleep, hydration, nutrition. And if we're traveling and always playing games, are we eating right, Andy? Are we drinking right? Are we sleeping on floors in hotels? Are we jamming? And that's my concern. Like, I'm not saying that it's good or bad, but if we're going to do it, let's do it right.
Well, so the problem, and we're in 100% agreement here. The problem, John, is that how do we change it? Okay, how do we change it? Because I've talked to so many people about this, and they agree this is what's going on. But the question is, okay, doc, so what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it has to start individually, I think, with you as parents. And I've shared this story dozens of times.
Mm-hmm.
My oldest son, Jonathan, who just had his first child 9 months ago.
Oh,
Little
congratulations.
girl, thank you. When he was in kindergarten, the day before, in fact, this morning I ran into his kindergarten teacher at Trader Joe's. I was out getting some groceries, and there she was. Ironically, the day before kindergarten started, got a phone call from a dad of a kid in the class. Said he was starting a kindergarten soccer team. Wanted to know if I wanted to sign Jonathan up. I said, "Well, how'd you get my name?" He goes, "Well, I got all the kids' names off the board at the school, and I looked up, somehow he found our phone number through the school." And I said, "Well, thanks for calling, but we're going to pass. Jonathan's really interested in playing wiffle ball and shooting baskets. He's really not interested in soccer." And this guy's response was, "Well, apparently you don't know much about sports, because if you don't sign him up now, he's going to fall behind everybody else." And I said, "Well, apparently you don't know who I am, and I know a hell of a lot more about sports than you do. Thanks for the call and goodbye." Okay. My son ended up playing soccer in about third grade and played till he was a junior, senior in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't sign him up. He had no interest.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to do that, sign him up and make him do that. Now, my other son, Gregory, who swam until he was a senior at New York University, he got all excited about playing soccer when he was a kindergartner. And I went to his first game, which was a co-ed game, a 3-on-3 game, boys and girls. And I came from a wedding reception, so I got there right when the game started. He was so excited. He scored 6 goals, 3 for his team and 3 for the other. and he played, until he was, I think, 11 or 12, and then he started swim. That's when swimming got important. I think the problem we have today is pressure to go to the Olympics, pressure to get a college scholarship, pressure to play professionally, pressure because we're seeing, these. First of all, John, it's all about money, right? Youth sports is all about money. That's what's
$30 billion a year industry.
Yeah, yeah, and there's the money in tournaments, leagues, uniforms, trophies, coaching, the whole thing. Okay, and it goes down here in Kansas City. There's a youth soccer team organization that has kids playing soccer at age 2. They even have tournaments for 2-year-olds. How sick is that? I think it's disgusting. Okay, and so what happens? Are those kids going to be playing soccer in high school? Probably not. Alex Morgan and Roger Federer, two of the greatest in their individual sports, played multiple sports till they're both about 14, and then they specialized in soccer and tennis. So, what do you think we need to do to change the environment, the atmosphere? Because I think there has to be you hit it on the head as far as at the high school level, the youth sport level, how much of sports is mental, how much emphasis is there? Well, most coaches don't even know what the mental part is about. They think it's about psyching people up, but that it's much deeper than that.
Yeah.
So let me get your thoughts.
Yeah. I honestly don't have an answer. I mean, what you said earlier, it's got to be individualized. You shared some great examples and about your experience, and I too. Our kids didn't do travel. Our son actually asked to do swim travel club when he was in the 8th grade. I ended up pulling him out after a couple of weeks because he told me his commitment was 3 days a week. He could pick any three, his three, work around his schedule. And Saturday morning, I remember him going and riding his bike with his friends and hanging out with Ben and Henry and doing what he should have been doing. As a 12-year-old boy, go play. Go play. I didn't say anything.
But we don't see that. Okay, here's the other thing you hit on a great point. When's the last time you drove by a grade school and saw a group of kids out there playing without parents telling them what to do?
Yeah.
Silence is golden. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there are safety issues today that are much more pronounced than they were when you or I grew up.
For sure.
But still, you don't see a group of kids up at the grade school playing. They're at an organized sports practice. Yeah. And they're being told how to catch, how to run, how to shoot, how to dribble. They can't just experiment on their own. We used to go up to the grade school and play 500.
Oh man, I used to love 500.
Yeah, we'd play it till it got dark out, and sometimes even when it was dark.
Yes.
But so I think where we're at today is the money that's gotten involved in the youth sports business, which, as you said, is a multi-billion-dollar business, has focused more on that than on what the title of my book is: Just Let Them Play.
Let them play.
Go have fun. The word "fun" has been taken out of youth sports by so many adults because it's the adults' egos and focus on we won. You go to the office and say, "Hey, our 8-year-old team won the soccer championship. Isn't that great? I've got a trophy here."
And we're getting rings.
Yeah, just like the Chiefs rings that were made this year with a mistake. That's a whole other story. Anyway, but the fact is, what's your perspective on what would, if you were going to speak to a group of parents at an elementary school about youth sports, what would you say? What would you present to them? Because you've got tremendous experience here and knowledge. What would you say?
Yeah, that's a great question. In elementary school, we're talking about 5-year-olds, right?
Kindergarten all the way up to
all the way up to 10 or whatever they are when they finish 5th grade. Let your kid play. They don't need to be in an organized sport at age 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, how many kids are doing their sport more than they're at home hanging out with their siblings or their parents or just being a kid? And to me, that's like, think about how many skills and strategies you learned growing up as a kid going to the park, right? The 2 best players, they were the captains. Remember that? and you take your captain, I'm a captain, and now we pick, and it was okay to get picked last,
Now
right?
you're telling me, now you're explaining why I was picked last then.
They saved the best for last.
Okay.
But the reality was get better, right? Just get better. And everybody wanted to make each other better. Sure, we wanted to win, but it was all about having fun. You made the rules up as you went along, and think about the leadership that was developed during those formative years. But most importantly, think about the fun that you had doing it. Like I can remember as a 5, 6 year old kid on Thanksgiving, the snow coming down, me and my brothers and neighbors and my sister going to the park across the street and playing tackle football in the snow. It was so much fun. There were no parents there to organize it. And so I think a couple of things. Number one, expose them to everything. Expose them to everything with no like hidden agenda that you have to in order to keep up with the Joneses. Because the reality is if you're cross training your body by participating in multiple things that you enjoy, then you're more likely going to improve. And as you continue to improve, as your coordination develops, as your hand-eye coordination, your physical coordination, as all those things develop, you may continue to enjoy the sport. But if you don't, that's got to be okay too. The other thing that I would encourage people to do is look at the certification, the qualification of the people that are leading your programs. And are they are they educational based, meaning process based, or are they outcome based, which then turns into a transaction and transactional relationships rather than transformational relationships? And that's what I would encourage kids and families to identify first. Like, what is my why? Why am I doing this? Is it what my kid wants or is it what I want so that I can brag at the pool or at the social hour, happy hour, whatever on the weekend?
Let me interrupt you right there. Let me
Yeah,
interrupt you right there. You just hit on a very important point. Is it what my kid wants or is it what I want to brag about myself?
come on, man.
And yes, and I think too many parents get caught up with the notoriety of their child, which they then take onto themselves and express it. Well, my son, my daughter just won the 50-yard freestyle swim, and she's gonna be pretty good. And boy, it makes me proud. Well, that's great. She won. Okay, good for her. You didn't do it. She did it. Okay. Yeah, it's great. You can brag about it, but it's not about you. It's about her.
Hmm.
And oftentimes, what I see is a lot of parents take on what their kids did. They apply it to themselves because they weren't that good. And now it's like, well, yeah, look at this. To go back to something you said earlier, how much of sports is mental?
Hmm.
I always like to say you can have two athletes physically the same, but the one with the stronger mind will come out on top. What's a stronger mind? Well, I believe I talk about with so many of the athletes that I work with, and I have a Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl jersey on my wall in my office.
Hmm.
And this individual guy wrote on there several things, but one of the things he wrote on there was FOE, focus on effort.
Come on.
And we talk about focus on effort instead of focus on results.
Hmm.
Now, he happens to be, in my opinion, the best at what he does in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Not Patrick Mahomes, by the way, who is the best, but that's somebody else. But he's I think the best at what he does because his focus is on himself and what he has to do for him to be the best. He's a team player, he's a good teammate, but he gets prepared for every game and gets himself mentally prepared. He'll sit there and say, the mental aspect is the key thing.
Hmm.
And we've talked about this, how that applies to younger kids. And I have all these kids that I see in my office who see his jersey up there. And in fact, I had a young boy in yesterday who is starting his freshman year in high school,
Mm-hmm.
14. And he said, Dr. Jacobs, look at my hand. And he held up his hand. He has the letters FOE on the outside of his hand. He goes, that's my focus is on effort. And my coach asked what it'll stand for. And I told him, he goes, where'd you get that from? So I shared. I think fun. That's what youth sports is supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
And the winning and losing is going to happen. We all know that no matter what the sport, whatever level, you're going to lose. You might win, probably lose a lot more often than you win. but that's okay, right? It's okay. And when parents get upset about that, it gets blown out of proportion. So that's why I think we have to educate the coaches and the parents starting at the younger ages about the development process, what it should be about, like you said, about developing skills, having fun. Our fourth chapter in our book is called Embracing Failure Can Lead to Fun.
Well,
And that failure got to be, they have to learn how to do that. Let me get your thoughts. I've rambled on here long enough.
I was reading, are you familiar with, I can't remember where the study was. I think it might have been Brett Ledbetter. I took it from. Um, Japanese are much further advanced in mathematics than students in the United States. Study was done on eighth graders, and they were watching, observing, trying to identify the reasons why. Was it the instruction? Was it the learning environment? Was it the resources available? Was it the curriculum? Was it whatever? The number of problems they're doing for homework. What they identified was it was the amount of time spent in productive struggle. So we're talking about eighth grade aged students. The amount of time spent in productive struggle. And what that means, as you know, is when I am faced with something that I cannot solve, I got to have the curiosity, the courage in order to continue to plow through it, the grit, the determination, the confidence, and the belief that it's not about failure, it's about growth. And what they found was productive struggle was the factor, the determining factor in the difference between the Japanese students and the American students as it relates to math. Japanese students, during this study, it was identified they spent 40% of their time in productive struggle. Some of that productive struggle included the teacher giving the kids the wrong answer. And then they had to figure out the way to get to the solution. United States, 2% of the time was spent in productive struggle. And so I'm not saying that
we cover up when kids screw up. We try to fix it for them instead of letting them fix it themselves.
Yep.
Would you agree? Is that part of the problem?
Yeah, and I think part of the fear is, I think on potentially, I don't want to put words in people's mouth, but I would say on the side of a coach, they don't want to end up in a parent meeting. On the side of a teacher, they don't want to end up in a parent meeting where the child, where it might not have worked out, or where you're not being fair, or whatever it may be. But the time spent in productive struggle, I truly believe when kids continue to learn the value in overcoming obstacles and adversity in whatever part of life, whether it's fine arts, whether it's the classroom, whether it's the academic, the athletic arena, whatever, like being able to overcome obstacles and adversity. And that includes losing, that includes getting cut from a team, that includes sitting the bench, that includes all the things. That's part of the growth process.
So when you have extra credit all the time, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I would first ask if you got the credit, right? If I got a D going into class, I can't get the extra credit if I didn't get the credit. So I don't even, I remember extra credit as a student, rarely used it as a teacher. Because to me, if you turn in paper towels at the end of the semester to try to get 10 extra points to go from a D to a C, a B to an A, that's not what it's about. It's about, did you meet the standards? Did you learn the curriculum? Can you demonstrate that you learned it through whatever it is I need you to demonstrate it through? My opinion on extra credit, there shouldn't be.
So I think with young kids today, I think what I'm hearing you say, which is running parallel with what I'm saying, is this. I think it's great to play sports as a young kid, but I wouldn't worry about the score. I wouldn't worry about the results until you're probably in seventh or eighth grade.
Countries that do that.
What's that?
There are countries that do that.
And I would focus more on development and having fun, and that you want to fail because you're going to fail later, and you've got to learn about failure, how to handle it, how to deal with it, how to grow from it, how to get better with it, not to be scared of it and run away from it.
Wow.
And if you sign up for, I don't think there's anything wrong in 5 and 6 years of age, kids starting to play sports. I have trouble with them and playing in leagues and all that type of stuff. Go and learn a sport, learn the skills, have fun with it. And years ago, I was the University of Kansas first sports psychologist from 1981 to 1985.
Oh, wow.
And one of the greatest coaches I ever knew was Bob Timmons, University of Kansas track coach. He was Jim Ryan's coach. He coached dozens of NCAA qualifiers champions. Wonderful man. He gave me my first job. And while I was there, I was the University of Kansas men's basketball team psychologist 1983, 84. I got to know Larry Brown. And Larry told me something that stuck with me for years. I would have many long talks with him about sports and kids and pressure and things like that. And he said, I think every young child should play a team sport and an individual sport. Play an individual sport because you learn about self-confidence. Play a team sport because you learn about sharing and working together. Hit it right on the head. And I think as you know, so I think for parents today, yeah, get your kids involved in sporting activities, but also music, debate, band, other things too, because you got to develop both sides of it. And I think the key thing is when you go interview for interview to sign your son or daughter up for a coach or for a team, interview the coach. What's the coach's philosophy? If the coach, we're here to win, we're here to win the championship. I'd run, don't walk. I would run away from that guy or woman. If they're there to say, if we win a championship, we lose, I don't care. I want the kids to have fun and grow and get better. And I'm finding throughout my 33 years on the radio, and I talk about this all the time, more and more people are saying to me, you know what, Doc, it's more about the kids that survive and do better are the ones that weren't afraid to fail and lose, weren't afraid to mess up because it's part of the game. They grew from it and learned from it, got better from it. And because they had coaches who, as you said, dealt with the mental part.
And it wasn't about the scoreboard or society's scoreboard that's so valuable. And I tell you, I don't know if you've seen this video. It was it might have been like an 11 or 12-year-old girls basketball game. And the gym is empty, like it likely is at a lot of these events. And regardless of the sport, but a lot of the travel stuff, you have parents in the bleachers because nobody else knows who's playing or about the event. But here's what happens. You got a young girl shooting a free throw during the game. So she goes to the line, she does her little pre-shot routine, what appeared to be a pre-shot routine, dribbles it 3 times, boom, air ball. Didn't hit a thing. Left of the basket, the distance was good. And you hear somebody from the stands yell, air ball. And the kid at the free throw line turns and looks, and the lady says, it's okay, I'm her mom. After somebody made a comment like, hey, that's what you hear in the video. Think about that child for a minute. How courageous is she going to be when faced with fear, adversity, obstacles? When her own parent is going to ridicule her when she errors in her performance. Not her effort, her performance, and the outcome. And if that's truly what it's all about, like I love seeing the shirts, trust the process. You ever see those? Ask them what their process is. If they can't articulate it, they don't have one. And if you don't have one and you can't articulate it, then how can I trust it?
Well, my older son had a shirt that said "Crust the process" because he loved pepperoni pizza, but that's the same type of thing. John, we're obviously on the same page here with this. So as we wrap things up tonight, what would you say? How would you encourage young parents who's have kids, 4, 5, 6 years of age, about getting involved in youth sports? What would you say to them? What would you suggest they do? What would you suggest they don't do?
Yeah, I think number one, first and foremost, and I don't want this to sound like I'm bashing parents because parents want the best for their kids. And that starts out at an early age. And I think at some point, for some, it becomes like trying to keep up, trying to compete with so-and-so, because if I don't go out for this team, I'm not going to make that team. And if I don't make that team, then I can't make this team. And so first and foremost, make sure it's what your kid wants to do. And I think at an early age, expose them to everything so that they can figure out what they want to do. My son, for example, I told you he did them all. 8th grade going into high school, I coached basketball. 8th grade going into high school, everybody's wondering what's Peyton Woods going to do, basketball or swimming, because they overlapped in the same season. And they would ask me, I said, I don't know, he's going to do what he decides he wants to do. He's going to run cross country in the fall, track and field in the spring. And whatever he does in the winter, he's going to decide. Well, we get to the school year. In the fall, I remember going down to the basement because it's getting close now to basketball season and swim season. And I said, can we chat for a minute? He said, yeah. I said, I hear a lot of people asking about basketball or swim. What are you going to do? So we had a conversation like, here's how it's going to work. Whatever you pick, your mom and I are going to love you. And when you look up into the stands, you're going to see us right there every time. But you're going to be doing the work. And so you make sure that it's what you love.
And he was in eighth, ninth grade, and that's when the decisions have to be made by the young person, not by the parent.
Yeah, and so he chose. Now he did 3 sports, like I said, but like, what would I share with parents is, number one, it has to be the kid. Expose them to everything early, because kid doesn't know, oh, I might want to do fill in the blank. Expose it to them, but in mini bursts. Like, it doesn't have to be a 52-week season. It could be a weekend where they're going and doing maybe 3 different sports at once. Maybe they're doing soccer, maybe they're doing flag football, maybe they're doing basketball or volleyball or water polo or golf or whatever it is. Expose them to it. And then as they begin to find what they enjoy or who they enjoy doing it with, because I think that's a piece that gets missed too. And not necessarily who you're friends with and what their kids are doing. So make sure it's theirs, and then support them unconditionally and wholeheartedly. I would also investigate any team, travel team, because I don't think there's a governing body that determines coaches for travel teams. I could be wrong. Are there any certifications that are required? And what's the training? What's the professional development that happens for these coaches? And make sure that they run a transformational program rather than a transactional program, and you're not just the next paycheck.
And I would also emphasize that you ask a coach, what's their definition of winning? Is it coming in first place or going out and doing the best we can? Because to me, a winner goes out and does the best they can. And if they did the best they could, they won.
Yeah. Self-satisfaction that comes from, right, knowing that you've done the best that you're capable of doing.
Yeah, because winning to me is not about coming in first place. It's about accomplishing your goals. Well, John, it's been a pleasure having you on tonight. Obviously, you understand what's going on here, which is why you've been involved in the business for so long. And you've raised some great kids, apparently, too. So I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. People like to get a hold of you. How can they reach you?
Yeah, they can reach me at john.woods@d128.org.
Well, John Woods, it's been a pleasure having you on tonight. Hopefully we'll talk again. Obviously, you get it. You've raised your kids properly the right way, for everything you're sharing with us. And I want to thank you so much for being my guest tonight.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to reading Let Them Play.
Thank you. So if you enjoyed our conversation, check out my website, winnersunlimited.com, where you can click on the podcast tab at the top of the page and connect with me and hear all kinds of interviews I've had over the years. There you go.
Been doing it all day on my 5-hour trip home. My buddy was driving, and I was like, I hope you don't mind, but I got to do a little background research on Dr. Jacobs real quick.
Well, after checking me out, you'd still come on the show, so that's a good sign. So that's winnersunlimited.com, everybody. You can send me an email at drj@winnersunlimited.com or get a hold of me at my office, 816-561-5556. Take